Emma had always considered herself unlucky in love. At 36, fresh from a divorce that left her feeling empty, she found herself temporarily living in her sister's spacious suburban home while her sister's family vacationed in Europe. She needed the change of scenery, the quiet, and most importantly, the distance from her old life. The mid-June morning was already warm when Emma heard the doorbell ring. Coffee in hand, dressed in comfortable shorts and a loose t-shirt, she wasn't expecting visitors. She pulled her chestnut hair into a quick ponytail as she walked to the door. "Coming," she called, setting her mug down on the entryway table. When she opened the door, time seemed to freeze. Standing before her was Jack Miller, his familiar blue eyes widening in recognition. It had been 15 years since high school, but she would have known him anywhere. His shoulders were broader now, his jaw more defined, but his smile, that smile that had once made her teenage heart race, was exactly the same. "Emma," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Emma Thompson." "It's Emma Davis now," she replied automatically, then quickly added, "Well, it's back to Thompson again, actually." She felt heat rising to her cheeks. Jack shifted the toolbox in his hand. "Your sister mentioned she needed the kitchen sink fixed before they left. I didn't realize you'd be staying here." Emma stepped back, gesturing for him to come inside. Lisa didn't mention who was coming to fix it. What a small world. Her pulse quickened as he passed by her, the faint scent of his cologne bringing back a flood of memories. "How long has it been?" Jack asked, following her to the kitchen. "Senior year?" Emma nodded, watching as he set his toolbox on the floor beside the sink. 15 years. You left for college on the West Coast, and I stayed here." Jack knelt down, opening the cabinet beneath the sink. "I moved back about 5 years ago after my dad got sick. Took over his business after he passed." He glanced up at her. "I heard you married Tom Davis." Emma leaned against the counter. "And now I'm unmarried again, just finalized 3 months ago." Jack's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be," Emma said. "It was for the best. We wanted different things." She didn't mention the loneliness, the arguments, or the gradual realization that they had become strangers sharing a house. "What about you?" "Married with kids by now, I imagine." Jack shook his head, focusing on the pipes beneath the sink. "Engaged once, about 4 years ago. It didn't work out." The kitchen fell quiet except for the occasional clink of Jack's tools. Emma found herself studying him, the way his t-shirt stretched across his back, how his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. She remembered how they'd once talked about a future together, before life pulled them in different directions. "Can you pass me that wrench?" Jack pointed to his toolbox. Emma knelt beside him, their fingers brushing as she handed him the tool. A small jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. "Remember prom night?" Jack asked suddenly, his voice low. "When we snuck away to the lake?" Emma smiled, memories washing over her. "The stars were so bright that night. And you were wearing that blue dress." Jack's eyes met hers, and for a moment, they weren't 30-something adults with years of separate lives behind them. They were 18 again, full of dreams and possibilities. The moment broke when Jack turned back to the sink. "This is going to need a part I don't have with me. I'll have to come back tomorrow to finish up." Emma stood, smoothing her shorts. "I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere for a while." As Jack packed up his tools, their conversation shifted to safer topics: mutual friends, changes in their hometown, Lisa's family. But beneath the casual words ran an undercurrent of awareness, of chances not taken and paths not followed. At the door, Jack paused. "It was really good seeing you again, Emma." "You too, Jack." Their eyes held for a beat too long before he turned to leave. Emma closed the door behind him, leaning against it, her heart beating faster than it had in years. Tomorrow he would return, and suddenly, the empty house didn't feel quite so lonely anymore. Emma woke earlier than usual the next morning. She found herself changing her outfit twice before settling on a casual summer dress that she knew brought out the green in her eyes. She told herself it was just because the day promised to be hot, not because Jack would be returning to finish the sink repair. The memory of yesterday's encounter had kept her awake well into the night. Seeing Jack after all these years had stirred feelings she thought long buried. His smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, the gentle confidence in his movements. All of it reminded her of why she had fallen for him in high school. Just after 10, the doorbell rang. Emma took a deep breath before answering it. "Morning," Jack said, his smile warm. He held up a small paper bag. "I brought donuts. Still like the chocolate-glazed ones?" Emma's heart skipped. "You remembered." "Some things you don't forget," he replied, following her inside. In the kitchen, Emma made fresh coffee while Jack set to work on the sink. They fell into an easy conversation, filling in the gaps of the years they'd spent apart. "So after the divorce, I decided to take a break from teaching," Emma explained, sitting on a stool near where Jack worked. "My sister offered her place while they're in Europe. 3 months to figure out what's next." Jack nodded, his hands busy with the pipes. "And what are you thinking?" "I'm considering a completely fresh start, maybe move to the coast, open that little bookshop I always talked about." She smiled, remembering how she'd shared that dream with him on late-night phone calls. "The one with the reading nook by the window and the little cafe in the corner?" Jack asked, glancing up at her. "You remember that too?" Emma felt a flutter in her chest. "Like I said, some things stick with you." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. By noon, the sink was fixed. Emma prepared sandwiches, and they moved to the back porch to eat lunch. The summer air was fragrant with the scent of nearby jasmine, and the sound of neighbor children playing drifted over the fence. "Remember how we used to talk about having kids?" Jack asked suddenly. Emma nodded, a slight ache in her heart. 3 of them. 2 boys and a girl. Tom didn't want children. "He did, just not with me," Emma admitted, looking down at her plate. "He left me for someone else. Someone younger." Jack's hand reached across the table, covering hers. "Then he was an idiot." The warmth of his touch sent a tingle up her arm. When she looked up, the genuine care in his eyes made her breath catch. "What about you?" she asked. "What happened with your engagement?" Jack withdrew his hand, running it through his hair. "Caroline was great, but there was always something missing. We wanted different things from life." He paused. "I think maybe I was comparing everyone to something I had once." The air between them seemed to thicken. Emma found herself noticing the way sunlight played on his forearms, the slight stubble on his jaw. "I should probably get going," Jack said finally, standing up. "I have another job this afternoon." Emma walked him to the door, an unexpected disappointment settling in her chest. At the threshold, Jack turned to her. "I was thinking," he began, a hint of nervousness in his voice that reminded her of the shy boy who'd once asked her to the homecoming dance. "Would you maybe want to have dinner tomorrow night? To catch up properly?" Emma smiled, warmth spreading through her. "I'd like that." "Great," Jack replied, his relief visible. "I'll pick you up at 7? As he walked to his truck, Emma called after him, "Is this a date, Jack Miller?" He turned, the sun behind him creating a halo around his silhouette. "I think it might be, Emma Thompson." After he drove away, Emma closed the door, leaning against it. Her heart was racing in a way it hadn't in years. She tried to temper her expectations. They were different people now, with years of separate lives and experiences between them. But as she touched her fingers to her lips, smiling to herself, she couldn't help wondering if sometimes the path not taken could unexpectedly circle back around. Emma spent the next day in a state of nervous anticipation. By 6 o'clock, she had changed outfits 4 times, finally deciding on a simple red dress that she knew flattered her figure. She left her hair down, soft waves framing her face, and applied just enough makeup to enhance her features without looking like she was trying too hard. At precisely 7, the doorbell rang. Emma took one last glance in the mirror, took a deep breath, and went to answer the door. Jack stood on the porch holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. He had traded his work clothes for dark jeans and a crisp blue button-down that matched his eyes. His hair was neatly combed, and the scent of his cologne wafted gently toward her. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes taking her in with undisguised appreciation. "Thank you," Emma replied, feeling a blush warm her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Jack handed her the flowers with a slightly shy smile. "I remembered these were your favorite. Found them at the farmer's market today." Emma buried her nose in the colorful blooms. The fact that he remembered such a small detail made her heart flutter. "Let me put these in water, and then we can go." Jack had made reservations at a small Italian restaurant by the lake. The dining room was intimate with soft lighting and a view of the water. They were seated at a corner table, candles flickering between them. "This is perfect," Emma said, looking around. "I didn't even know this place existed." "It opened a couple years ago," Jack explained. "The owner is a friend of mine." As they shared a bottle of red wine and delicious food, the years seemed to melt away. They laughed about high school memories, shared stories of their lives since then, and discovered all the ways they had changed and the ways they had stayed the same. "Do you remember our first kiss?" Jack asked as they lingered over dessert. Emma smiled, the memory vivid. "Behind the bleachers after you won the championship game. You were still in your uniform. You were wearing your cheerleading outfit," Jack added, his eyes warm with the memory. "I was so nervous my hands were shaking." "I couldn't tell," Emma admitted. "It was perfect." Their eyes met across the table, and something electric passed between them. Jack reached across and took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her palm. "I've thought about you over the years," he confessed. "Wondered what might have happened if we tried to make it work." Emma's heart raced. "I wondered too." After dinner, they walked along the lakeshore, the water shimmering with reflected moonlight. They talked about dreams they'd realized and ones they'd let go, about lessons learned from failed relationships, about what they wanted from life now. When they reached a small, secluded pier, Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. In the moonlight, his expression was tender, almost vulnerable. "Emma," he said softly, "I know it's been a long time, and we're different people now, but I can't help feeling like there's still something here." He gestured between them, something that never really went away. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. "I feel it too." Jack stepped closer, his hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. "I'd really like to kiss you now," he whispered, "if that's okay." Instead of answering, Emma rose slightly on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative as they rediscovered each other. Then Jack's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened. All the years between them seemed to disappear. The passion that had once burned between them flared to life again, stronger and richer for the waiting. Emma's hands moved to the back of Jack's neck, her fingers threading through his hair as his lips moved against hers. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Jack rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "Come back to the house with me," Emma whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. Jack pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "Are you sure?" Emma nodded, more certain than she'd been about anything in a long time. "I'm sure." Hand in hand, they walked back to Jack's car, the night air charged with possibility and the promise of rediscovered passion. The drive back to Lisa's house was filled with an electric tension. Emma's hand rested on Jack's thigh as he drove, his fingers occasionally leaving the steering wheel to intertwine with hers. Stolen glances and soft smiles replaced conversation, the silence between them comfortable yet charged with anticipation. When they arrived, Emma fumbled slightly with the keys, her hands trembling with nervous excitement. Jack stood close behind her, his breath warm against her neck. Once inside, he closed the door and gently turned her to face him. "We don't have to rush anything," he said softly, his eyes searching hers. Emma reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "I've waited 15 years, she whispered. "I think that's long enough." Their lips met again, the kiss deeper and more urgent than before. Jack's hands slid down to her waist, drawing her closer until she could feel the rapid beating of his heart against her chest. Emma's fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt, eager to rediscover what had once been so familiar yet was now thrillingly new. They moved to the living room, unwilling to break contact long enough to climb the stairs to the bedroom. Jack's shirt fell to the floor, followed by Emma's dress. In the soft glow of the table lamp, they explored each other with gentle touches and whispered words of appreciation. "You're even more beautiful than I remembered," Jack murmured against her skin as he trailed kisses down her neck. Emma sighed with pleasure, her hands roaming across the muscles of his back. Every touch felt like coming home and embarking on a new adventure all at once. They sank onto the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, the world beyond the two of them fading away. Jack paused to look into her eyes, his expression a mixture of desire and tenderness. "I never stopped thinking about you, Emma, not really." She pulled him closer, her heart full. I think a part of me was always waiting for you to come back." Their bodies moved together with a perfect rhythm, rediscovering the dance they had once known so well. Emma lost herself in the sensation of Jack's touch, in the taste of his kiss, in the weight of his body against hers. Time seemed to stand still as they reconnected, healing old wounds and creating new memories. Just as they were completely lost in each other, wrapped in the most intimate of embraces on the living room couch, a sound cut through their passion. The unmistakable jingle of keys in the front door lock. Emma froze, her eyes flying open in panic. "Someone's coming in," she whispered urgently. Jack looked toward the entryway, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. They scrambled to disentangle themselves, reaching for discarded clothing. Before they could fully cover themselves, the door swung open. A young man in his early 20s stood in the doorway, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His eyes widened in shock as he took in the scene before him. "Aunt Emma," he exclaimed, immediately averting his gaze and turning his back. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." Emma clutched Jack's shirt to her chest, mortification washing over her in a hot wave. "Tyler, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at college." Tyler kept his back turned, one hand partially covering his eyes. "Surprise visit? Clearly bad timing. I'll just wait outside." The door closed quickly behind him, leaving Emma and Jack in stunned silence for a moment before they burst into nervous laughter. "That's your nephew?" Jack asked, hastily pulling on his pants. Emma nodded, her cheeks burning as she slipped her dress over her head. "My sister's son. He has a key for emergencies." She ran her fingers through her tousled hair. "God, this is so embarrassing." Jack buttoned his shirt, his expression a mixture of amusement and chagrin. "Well, I guess we're caught." Once they were decent, Emma took a deep breath. "I should probably go talk to him." Jack nodded, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. "I'll be right here." Emma smoothed her dress and tried to compose herself. What had been a perfect evening of rekindled romance had suddenly turned into an awkward family situation. She took another steadying breath and went to open the door, wondering how on earth she was going to explain to her nephew why she was half naked with her high school sweetheart on his mother's couch. Emma opened the front door to find Tyler leaning against the porch railing, staring intently at his phone. He looked up when he heard the door, his face flushing slightly. "Is it safe to come in now?" he asked, a hint of amusement breaking through his embarrassment. Emma nodded, stepping aside. "We're decent. I'm so sorry about that, Tyler." Tyler entered cautiously, his eyes darting to Jack, who stood awkwardly in the living room, hair still disheveled. An uncomfortable silence filled the space. "So," Tyler said finally, setting his duffel bag down. "I guess introductions are in order." Emma cleared her throat. "Tyler, this is Jack. Jack, this is my nephew Tyler." Jack stepped forward, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, though I wish it had been under different circumstances." Tyler shook his hand, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Same here. Much different circumstances." The tension eased slightly as Tyler's obvious amusement replaced his initial shock. Emma gestured toward the kitchen. "Let me make some coffee. We should probably talk." In the kitchen, Emma busied herself with the coffee maker, while Jack and Tyler sat at the island counter, making stilted small talk about Tyler's college studies. Emma's mind raced with worries. What would Tyler tell Lisa? Would this make things awkward for everyone? What must he think of her? Setting 3 mugs on the counter, Emma took a deep breath. "Tyler, I know this must seem, well, unexpected." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Finding my aunt in a compromising position with a strange man on my mom's couch? Yeah, a bit unexpected." His tone was light, but Emma could see the questions in his eyes. "Jack and I knew each other in high school," Emma explained. "We reconnected when he came to fix the sink." "And reconnected quite thoroughly, it seems," Tyler observed, causing Jack to choke slightly on his coffee. Emma felt her face heat up. "I'm not usually so. This isn't something I..." To her surprise, Tyler reached across the counter and patted her hand. "Aunt Emma, I'm 20 years old, not 12. And after what you've been through with Uncle Tom, honestly, I'm happy to see you with someone who makes you smile." Emma blinked, taken aback by his maturity. "You're not going to tell your mom?" Tyler shrugged. "What's to tell? That her sister is dating again? Isn't that a good thing?" "We're not exactly dating. Jack interjected, then quickly glanced at Emma. I mean, not officially, yet. Though I'd like to be. A warm feeling spread through Emma's chest at his words. Their eyes met across the kitchen, and for a moment, Tyler seemed to fade from her awareness. Tyler cleared his throat pointedly. Well, this is cute and all, but maybe save the googly eyes for when I'm not here. His smile took any sting from the words. And don't worry about Mom. She's been saying for months that you need to get back out there. Later, after they'd all relaxed somewhat, and Tyler had retreated upstairs to the guest room, Jack and Emma stood in the dimly lit kitchen. I should probably go, Jack said, though he made no move toward the door. Emma nodded, suddenly shy again. Tonight didn't exactly end how I imagined. Jack chuckled, pulling her into his arms. No, but it was memorable. His expression grew more serious. Emma, I meant what I said. I'd like to see where this goes. Properly, with actual dates and everything. Emma smiled up at him, her heart lighter than it had been in years, despite the evening's awkwardness. I'd like that too. Their goodnight kiss was gentle, a promise of things to come rather than the passionate culmination they'd been headed toward earlier. As Emma watched Jack drive away, she couldn't help but laugh softly to herself. Whatever happened next, she certainly had a story to tell, though perhaps not one she'd share at family gatherings. Emma woke to the smell of coffee brewing. She followed the aroma to the kitchen, where she found Tyler already up, pouring himself a cup. Morning, Aunt Emma, he said with a knowing smile. Sleep well. Emma grabbed a mug, avoiding his gaze. Surprisingly, yes. She took a sip of coffee, gathering her courage before asking, So, about last night. Tyler leaned against the counter. You want to know if I'm judging you or if I'm going to tell Mom? Emma nodded, feeling strangely like the teenager instead of the adult. Look, Tyler said, his expression softening. I saw how you looked at him, and how he looked at you. That wasn't just some random hookup. It wasn't, Emma admitted. Jack and I have history. Tyler smiled. Then that's all that matters. After everything with Uncle Tom, you deserve to be happy. Emma felt a rush of affection for her nephew. When did you get so wise? Must be those expensive college classes Mom and Dad are paying for, he joked. Speaking of which, I only dropped by to pick up some books I left here. I'm heading back to campus this afternoon. Relief and a strange disappointment washed over Emma. So soon? Finals week coming up, Tyler explained. Plus, I figure you and Jack might want some privacy. Emma's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jack. Good morning. Can't stop thinking about you. Dinner tonight? As she typed her reply, Tyler cleared his throat. That's him, isn't it? Your whole face just lit up. Emma nodded, unable to hide her smile. You know, Tyler said thoughtfully, you should probably tell Mom yourself before she gets back. Not about what I walked in on, he shuddered dramatically, but about you and Jack. Emma had been avoiding thinking about her sister's reaction. You think she'll be upset? That you're moving on after Tom? No way. That you're doing it on her couch? Tyler grinned mischievously. Maybe don't lead with that part. After Tyler left, Emma called Lisa in Europe, her heart pounding as she waited for her sister to answer. Emma, is everything okay at the house? Lisa's voice came through, concerned. Everything's fine, Emma assured her quickly. But something's happened that I wanted to tell you about myself. There was a pause. You met someone, Lisa guessed. Emma laughed in surprise. How did you know? Your voice. I haven't heard you sound like that in years. Lisa's tone was warm. Who is he? Jack Miller. Remember him from high school? The Jack Miller you were crazy about? The one who broke your heart when you left for college? Emma winced. We were young. Neither of us was ready for long distance. And now? Emma smiled to herself. Now we're adults who know what we want. And you want each other, Lisa finished for her. Oh, Emma, I'm happy for you. Just be careful, okay? You've been through a lot. I will, Emma promised. And Lisa, Tyler kind of, walked in on us. Nothing too bad, she added hastily, but it was awkward. Lisa's laughter echoed through the phone. Poor Tyler, though it serves him right for showing up unannounced. That evening, Jack arrived with takeout from their favorite restaurant in high school. They ate on the back patio, talking about Tyler's visit and Emma's conversation with Lisa. So your family approves, Jack said, reaching for her hand across the table. They want me to be happy, Emma replied, intertwining her fingers with his. Jack's expression grew serious. I want that too, Emma. I know we've only reconnected for a few days, but I can't shake the feeling that this is our second chance. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared, Jack. What if it doesn't work out again? Jack moved his chair closer, cupping her face in his hands. What if it does? Some things are worth the risk. As the sun set behind them, casting golden light across the patio, Emma realized that for the first time since her divorce, perhaps for the first time in years, she was truly ready to take that risk. 3 weeks passed in a delightful blur of stolen evenings and lazy Sunday mornings. Emma and Jack fell into a comfortable routine, making up for lost time while discovering the new people they had become. They tried new restaurants, went for moonlit walks, and shared stories of the years they'd spent apart, and each night, when Jack reluctantly prepared to leave, their goodbyes grew longer and more difficult. By the time Lisa and her family were due to return from Europe, Emma had packed her belongings. Jack had asked her to move in with him, and after only the briefest hesitation, she had agreed. Are you sure this isn't too fast? Emma asked as she placed the last of her clothes into a suitcase. They were in the guest bedroom, Jack folding her sweaters with careful precision. We lost 15 years, he replied, his eyes meeting hers across the bed. I think we've done enough waiting. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught their attention. Emma looked out the window to see her sister's family climbing out of a taxi, luggage in tow. They're here, she said, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. Jack squeezed her hand, ready to make it official. Downstairs, the reunion was filled with hugs and exclamations over how much Lisa's younger children had grown. Emma watched as Jack charmed her sister and brother-in-law, the ease of his conversation making it seem as though he had always been part of their circle. So Tyler tells me you two had quite the reunion, Lisa whispered to Emma when they had a moment alone in the kitchen. Emma's cheeks flushed. Did he tell you everything? Lisa laughed. Enough for me to know I should probably clean the couch. Lisa, Emma groaned, mortified. Her sister bumped her shoulder playfully. I'm kidding, mostly. Her expression softened. He looks at you the same way he did in high school, you know. Like you're the answer to every question he's ever had. Later, they all gathered around the dining table, sharing a welcome home meal that Jack and Emma had prepared. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of glasses. During a lull, Lisa's husband raised his wine glass. I'd like to propose a toast, he announced, to new beginnings and second chances, and to interruptions that turn out to be blessings, Tyler added with a wink at Emma. As everyone drank, Jack reached for Emma's hand under the table. The simple touch, now so familiar yet still thrilling, grounded her in the moment. After dinner, as everyone helped clear the dishes, Lisa pulled Emma aside. So I hear you're not staying in the guest room anymore. Emma nodded. Jack asked me to move in with him. I know it seems sudden. Lisa cut her off with a hug. Sometimes the heart knows what it wants, even when the head takes time to catch up. She pulled back, her eyes misty. After Tom, I worried you might never trust love again. I'm so glad I was wrong. As the evening wound down, Emma and Jack stood on the front porch saying their goodbyes. Most of her things were already in his truck, ready for the short drive to what would now be their home. You'll come for dinner next weekend? Lisa insisted, hugging them both. We wouldn't miss it, Jack promised. Tyler, who had stayed an extra day to see his parents, stepped forward. Take care of her, he told Jack, his tone light but his eyes serious. Jack nodded. I plan to. As they drove away, Emma looked back at her sister's house, at the family waving from the porch. For months it had been her refuge, a place to heal and hide from the world. Now, sitting beside Jack as he drove through familiar streets, she realized she no longer needed a hiding place. Penny for your thoughts? Jack asked, reaching for her hand. Emma smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. I was just thinking that sometimes the most unexpected interruptions lead us exactly where we're supposed to be. Jack brought her hand to his lips. In that case, remind me to thank Tyler properly someday. Emma laughed, her heart full. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, she was eager to discover where it might lead.